What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Bucks. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see we have stepped up the co-host game today. We've got a Hall of Famer in the house, Bob Dandridge. We're going to be talking about the old Bucks. We're going to be talking about the new Bucks and everything in between as well. So we're going to have some fun. Remember, the Bucks up 2-1 against the Celtics as it currently stands as well. So let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday and on weekends during the playoffs when the Bucks play, and also find my work over at ESPN. And as I said, we've got a Hall of Famer in the house today, Milwaukee Bucks legend, four-time All-Star, Bob Dandridge, who has been kind enough to give us some time. How you doing, mate?
Doing great. I'm glad I'm on my time zone instead of yours.
Well, you know, it's 9:30 a.m. Monday morning. So when I said it's early, it's not too early. I've got nothing to complain about here. But this is perfect timing because the Bucks obviously have a day off here before Game 4. They'll try and go 3-1 up, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But we should acknowledge, like I said, we're dealing with a Hall of Famer here. And I will say this, if anyone hasn't seen your Hall of Fame speech, Bob, it's one of my absolute favorites. I watched it again this morning. I found it interesting, so entertaining to hear the journey that you took through basketball. But one thing was interesting to me. You said you were thankful for the wait, or the wait to get into the Hall of Fame was something that you appreciated over time. Why was that? Talk about that a little bit.
Because, oftentimes inductees get to go into the Hall of Fame, maybe in their early years, maybe 30s or 40s. And oftentimes your kids may not even be teenagers then. And they really don't appreciate the significance of the honor that you receive. And so my kids are between 28 and 47, and they went through the wait with me, and they appreciate it, and they are more aware of the significance of the honor now. And during the wait, it gave me an opportunity to practice patience and to do some other quality things in my life. And even now, as a Hall of Famer, it's nothing like what I had expected. It's more of a responsibility now as a Hall of Famer. It's not based on the fame and the accolades that go with it, but I realize that as a Hall of Famer, you have a responsibility, and what I've gotten out of it is that I'm responsible for being in service to really give back to me what was so freely given to me, and that was the skills that coaches and friends took time to help me in my basketball endeavors, but also help me to be a better person. So weight is something you go through, anxiety, go through periods of why not me, but then it also has given me an opportunity to look at credentials of some other individuals who may have gone in before me, and we as athletes or human beings tend to take others' accomplishments for granted. And I say that there are so many individuals that qualify to be Hall of Famers if we were to look deep into their endeavors and accomplishments. And that's why, for me, the weight has been really special. It given me a chance to be a better person spiritually, and to not be ashamed or fearful of opening up to other people. And like I said, if I had to do it all over again, and if I could gain the same things from the weight that I gained, I wouldn't have it no other way.
And you talk about the weight and seeing other people get inducted. And one of the things that I love that you also mentioned was the fact that, listen, I was guarding 90% of the players I was guarding were in the Hall of Fame. And you rattled off a few names that you played against. But when you think about, for me, if I look back and I look at the history of the game, and particularly those Milwaukee Bucks teams and that championship team, and some of the guys that you played alongside, but also had to play against, and the defense in that period of the game, it does make me think, when I think about this current day Bucks team that has so many great defenders on it, you were night to night dealing with some ridiculously good basketball players.
Oh, without a doubt. Guys like Bob Love, John Drew, Rick Barry, Havlicek. I mean, and some, I look at Billy Knight, I look at Willie Wise, Julius Irving, and a couple of guys that I've named are guys that are who played in the ABA, had their best years in the ABA. And, every night, because there were only about 12 or 13 teams there, and we were still playing 82 games. So you may see a guy 6-7 times a year. And as I was talking to Buck Williams recently, and we were talking about, no matter how great of a basketball player you were, there were at least 2 or 3 guys in the league that you did not want to play against. And so, although you may be in the Hall of Fame, there were still guys that are non-Hall of Famers that kicked our butts whenever we saw them.
Yeah, and you guys did your fair share of that as well. And when you do go back and just look at the stats, and obviously there's some vision out there, you can go back and watch these games. But you put up 19 points a game in the playoff run to win the championship. This is your second year, I believe, and 18 points across the regular season. What do you think back when you think about the championship? What's the first thing you think of that season, that team?
How I didn't realize the significance of winning an NBA championship in my second year, because I was under the opinion that if you played in the league long enough, you would automatically win a championship. But as I stayed in the league, I realized that some of the great ones may have gone through this league without winning a championship. My winning the championship in Milwaukee was something special because of the guys that I played with and the team that we had. And surely we can talk about 3 Hall of Famers being on that team: John McLaughlin, Lucius Allen, Bob Boozer, Greg Smith. We had as good of an 8-player rotation as any team currently in the league now. And the only way you can't just win a championship with your big 3 and maybe 2 other good starters. To win the championship, you got to have at least an 8-player rotation, and that's what we had in Milwaukee. And we were fortunate to have a coach, Larry Costello, who had played maybe 4 years prior to that on the championship 76ers team. So he had a good idea of the sacrifices that needed to be made to be a world champion. And he had a good idea of the sacrifices that we would have to make to be a championship team. So playing in Milwaukee and on that championship team, we had a young team, and that was what was good, but we wouldn't have been the team that we ended up being without a leader like Oscar Robertson, the big O coming in, giving us directions, and he was like a coach on the floor. Is interesting because the coach, especially in critical situations, and if he's to play as we left the bench and went on to the floor, he may change the play, and then the coach, seeing us line up, he's ranting and raving about not being in the right position. All we would do is point to the big O, and then the coach would say, okay. And it was a fun team. When you're winning, you have fun. And when some of these guys go through the league, and I said the fun time of being an NBA player is going deep into the playoffs. I mean, the regular season, but in the playoff, the intensity intensifies, and it's not only the players that are playing, it's the organizations, the staff in the team offices, it's the people that work in the arena, it's the fans. So when teams get a chance to be in the playoffs and win a championship, it's not only celebrated, by the players. And since being retired, I mean, I get letters and cards all the time from fans around the world. So we don't just have the fans in Milwaukee cheering for us, or when I was in Washington, the Washington fans, internationally, people pick NBA teams and follow them all year. And this was 50 years ago, before all this cable and international coverage. So, the playoffs are just special. Winning a championship in Milwaukee was special. And it's amazing because once you play on a championship team with a guy or an organization, you are forever bonded with that person or organization, because championships just don't come too often. And we take the Bucks, it's them 50 years to win another championship. And then we won a championship in Washington in 78, and there's no telling how long it's going to take them to get back to that level. So championships are something that cities and organizations really cherish.
So you spoke about the international reach of the NBA, and here you are. You're sitting here talking about the Milwaukee Bucks with an Australian. So it's a fair point you make. But when you talk about the 50 years for the Milwaukee Bucks, so as you're sitting there watching this team last year, and it felt kind of fitting that it was the 50-year anniversary and they were able to do it again, and you saw how the city got behind this team. So as you're watching this team last year, how do you feel? Are you emotional? Are you proud? What's going through your mind as you're watching this team do what they did?
I mean, of the above, and because like I said, it's not only the team, but it's the people in the city, because I have friends that are still Milwaukee Bucks fans, and they are excited. And I think I'm as excited this year as I was last year, and not to put any jinx on the team, but it would be great to see them do some back-to-back stuff. And, I can really stick my chest out. And because because the Bucks, even though they haven't won a championship in 50 years, they still had great teams with Moncrief, Marcus Johnson, Bridgman, you name it, Swin Nader, Junior Bridgman. I mean, they've just had a Michael Redd. So they've just had good teams over the last 50 years, and teams that were capable of winning a championship, but it was a miscue. And they didn't pull it off. So that goal was trying to win a championship. And like I said, I will cross my fingers that everything falls in place for them. And I'd love to see them do back-to-backs. And I know very few people talk about that back-to-back thing for fear of jinxing them, but I think they're capable of doing it.
So you played alongside Kareem in Milwaukee, and you won that title. And now we're watching Giannis here. And I must admit, I started watching Milwaukee play in the Ray Allen team. So we're talking early 2000s.
Okay.
And just by the nature of the Milwaukee Bucks and players come and go, and it is a small market, the idea that some player would come along that the Bucks would draft and pass the scoring record that Kareem had with the franchise and do all these things that Giannis did just a few years ago, it felt like it was unthinkable. So how have you viewed the path that Giannis has taken, and what do you enjoy? I mean, everyone enjoys watching him play, but how have you viewed his journey?
I mean, I admire him. I take my hat off to him because he's been willing to work on any deficiencies that he's had to be the player that he is now. He didn't just be a top draft choice and just sit back and not work to improve. He knew he needed to work on his shooting. It's obvious that he's done that. He's built his body, and it appears that his knowledge of the game has increased, his intellect for the game, because he's making more and more basketball type plays. And you mentioned Kareem, and it's taken Giannis twice as long.
That's right.
I don't want nobody to put Kareem in second place. What Giannis did in 9 years, which is greater than some of the greatest players, but remember, Kareem built those stats up in 5 years. And so, but Giannis is surely just a big factor, not only on the court, but in the city and in the state of Wisconsin. And the big thing about him is that everybody talks about humble. My thing is he's hungry. He wants to be the best. And I just don't see anybody. In fact, right now, I'll go so far as to say he's the best player in the league right now.
You mentioned earlier, you said with the rotation you guys had back with your championship team, and you said the importance of having a deep roster, and clearly the Bucks have shown that over the last 2 seasons. But clearly the game's changed. I'm wondering for you, when you watch, is there a player or is there a team you particularly enjoy? Obviously, you like the Bucks, but is there a player or a team that you look at and say, okay, yeah, I think this guy could hang when we were playing back in the day?
Oh, I mean, I'm a Middleton fan.
Okay.
I'm a big Chris Middleton fan, and I like Hachimura in Washington. And that's about it, because I'm having to learn players that have come into the league over the couple of years. But I will say that see what the NBA had in mind as a long-term plan is coming to fruition. Of the younger guys league coming in through the G League, I can see that master plan coming to fruition, because Minnesota, they got this young guard, Lawrence, I think is his name, from Georgia, and then of course the kid from Minnesota, from Memphis. There are just so many good young players that are 20 to 40-year-old basketball junkie in this generation to really know them. But I think on a whole, it's just so many good young players. And the thing I like about them is that they play old school defensively. They bumping and bruising each other out there now. And maybe that's why I've been watching some of the games for the defense. And I see how the 3-point shot is such a big factor and a big influence. And, I can see that everybody being able to shoot the three now. And I can see the percentages for the 3-point shot increasing throughout the league. So, I think this is, they advertise that this is exciting times for the league, but I think it's more exciting for the fans with the younger generation of players who are blossoming to be outstanding pros. And I'm seeing the offense and the defense playing a significant role in the outcome of games.
And this Bucks Celtics series is pretty physical, so that might be a series that you're enjoying. Like I said, the Bucks are leading that 2-1. One question I've got for you that I actually don't know the answer to, I've never heard. You finished your career and came back and played 11 games, I believe, with Milwaukee. What was the story there? Did you come back with the intention that you wanted to finish with Milwaukee? What happened here?
No. What had happened was I played 3 years in Washington, and it was a career-ending injury that I got my third year in Washington, and Washington did not pick up my option for me to play there a fourth year. So I'm at home in Washington, and training camp is getting ready to start in the league. And I had reached the point that, okay, I'm not, this is the end. This is the end of my career. And that was before NBA players really started to go to Europe to play. So about 2 days before training camp, I get a call from Don Nelson, who's coach of the Bucks. Marcus Johnson is holding out. They wanted to know, did I still have any basketball in me? And I said, sure. And I went out that morning and ran about a mile around an athletic track and went back home and went to Milwaukee to play. And once I got there, I made it through training camp, but my legs started hurting, and that was the reason I only played 11 games in Milwaukee. My last year.
It's a perfect look. I mean, you obviously wanted to play a bit longer, but it's perfect to finish in Milwaukee. That all makes sense.
Yeah,
That seems like
I mean that
it's a
was
good.
a good gesture on the Bucks to bring an old guy in and let him play 11 games and get credit towards his retirement for a partial year or whatever. So they took care of me.
So one other thing, and this is, for me again, as you come into basketball a bit later, and then you try and catch up on all the history, but uh, your name is up in the rafters. Was at the Bradley Center when I first went there, but now at Fiserv Forum. You've mentioned Marcus Johnson a couple of times. One of the things that I thought was really cool, that was the first time I got to be at a jersey retirement ceremony, which is always a fun time. So I don't know if you've got back there. Have you been to the new arena at all? But when
Oh
you
yeah,
when you
yes.
see games, you see that your name up there.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
it means a lot because again, that was a waiting process for me.
Yes. That's right. Well, Marcus also.
I finished playing there in '81, and they did. Yeah, and I, it was, I waited, and finally the right ownership came in and realized my contribution to the organization, and it was retired. But then again, when I was waiting, I still was given opportunities by the Bucks to come in and do appearances, and so they hadn't kicked me totally out of the door, and it was just a matter of the right ownership coming in and realizing, hey, this guy got some great stats here. This guy wasn't a bad player. Why isn't his number up here in the rafters? And so that's what you call a quality organization that's really willing to reach back and correct some wrongs that were done or correct some mistakes, I would say. And so that's a big part of, I think, the Bucks' success nowadays is that if you're the organization, it not only happens on the court, but it happens throughout your whole organization. And I think the winning teams are quality organizations, from the people that work in the arena to former players and even your staff. So the Bucks surely are a quality organization worthy of being champions.
Well, last one I've got for you here. The Bucks. This game 4 coming up tomorrow. I assume you'll find some time to be watching this game, and they're leading 2-1. And this is when you get to a 7-game series, and you're in this scenario at home. You didn't have home court originally, but you get that game 1. This is the type of game. If you take a 3-1 series lead, you put yourself in a really good position. No Chris Middleton, your guy's not out there. Maybe later on in this series, but you sounded like you were pretty confident that the Bucks can do something this year.
I'm confident that they can do something, and I think that they want to show how good of a team they are. Playing this series against Boston, but as a guy who's played in the playoffs all his career, the pressure is on Boston. I mean, and I think the Bucks will play with a lot of confidence because they don't want to go back to Boston and this thing is tied up. So I'm looking for probably as good a game in this series and the significant game 4, because game 4 can give either team some type of psychological edge. But the Bucks are capable of pulling it off because they're a team that can play ahead, they can grind it out, and I think Boston has a lot to think about.
You're the best, Bob. By the way, your Twitter handle we can see here down on the bottom of the YouTube screen, and I will say this because I got this follow, and I was like, Bob Dandridge followed me on Twitter. I'm like, is this real or is this they have all these fake accounts out of you, Bob? So I had to text someone at the Bucks, and I said, is this a real account? And they said, yes, it's real. Then I started annoying you, messaging you, asking you if we could do this. So I'm glad we could do it.
Oh yes. So we're on target, and we'll just follow each other.
I really appreciate it. Like I said, follow Bob on Twitter. I first saw Bob on Twitter because he tweeted something to mine and said #Fear the Deer. So we know he's on board for this championship run. But Hall of Famer, Bucks legend. It's always cool when I get the opportunity to speak to you guys, and I really appreciate it. By the way, we'll have the show tomorrow post game, Game 4, Bucks and Celtics. So we will speak to you guys then, and hopefully everyone's in a good mood. So we'll talk to you after Game 4.